A catastrophe has struck Walking D-Day. Can't find my Walking D-Day cap, so we have to do without it. Now, the British Canadians had taken half of Caen in Operation Charnwood on the 9th of July. General Dempsey was now preparing for the next stage, which was Operation Goodwood, which would hopefully take the rest of Caen and sweep down to Falaise. The build-up of troops was done in great secrecy, even though Sepp Deitreich knew there was an attack coming, whether it came from Hill 112 in the west or across the Yonne from the east. Now we're on Borgaboo Ridge here, and you can see you get a great view across Caen. Just to the left of that communication tower, you can see the cooling tower at the steelworks. That's a column bell. That's just to the east of Caen. And then a few miles north of that is Pegasus Bridge, where the men were going to cross a bridge to start Operation Goodwood. To the right of that you can see the mound of Bavant Wood. That was the front line on no man's land for several weeks between the Germans and the commandos, paratroopers. On the 17th of July, Rommel came to visit the troops on Borgaboo Ridge, or Bugabus Ridge as the British called it, and meet with his officers. Now, as usual, there's several accounts of what he actually did on the day. A plausible itinerary is Borgaboo Ridge, then a meeting with Sepp Deitreich at 1st Panzer Corps at Urville. This is where the Canadians would pass in Operation Totalize just 2 weeks later. He then went to meet General Eberbach at the Panzer Group West HQ at Mittois near Saint-Pierre-sur-Dive. Now, Rommel had come from La Roche-Guyon, which had been his headquarters since February 44. Now, he chose that because there was a chateau there with underground tunnels which were useful for storing ammunition and for security. It was also not far from Saint-Germain-en-Laye, where von Rundstedt had his headquarters, near Paris, and it was equidistant between Calais and Cherbourg, two possible sites for the invasion. So he'd come from there. It was on the banks of the Seine, not far from Giverny, where Monet had lived. So he'd come from there. Now that to set off back. Now, Sepp Deitreich had advised him to take a Kubbelwagen, which was less conspicuous than his Horch staff car, but Rommel wouldn't change. Now, as an aside, when von Kluge arrived in Normandy, Rommel had given that advice to von Kluge, and von Kluge wouldn't follow it, but after a few days in Normandy, he realised it was quite useful information, and he actually changed to use a Kubbelwagen. The route they would take them through Livarot, Vimoutiers, Passy, and then La Roche-Guyon. Now, in the car was Rommel in the rear seat, behind the driver, Carl Daniel. Next to Rommel was Major Neos. In front of Neos, on a backward-facing fold-down seat, was Captain Lang, Rommel's aide-de-camp. Next to the driver was Feldwebel Holke. He was kneeling in front of his seat so he could face backwards to watch for Yabos. That was the fighter bombers that were incessantly attacking German vehicles. After leaving Sepp Deitreich at Urville, Rommel's car would have come this way, past Estrée-la-Campagne, and we'd be passing Hill 140. That's where the Worthington force was ambushed. They went to the wrong hill, should have been going to Hill 195, then ended up on Hill 140 due to following the Duke's Road, straight Roman road that they took to be the road the Falaise. So there's the track that leads up to Hill 140, the Roman road. Worthington and his force were held up by those woods. And there's the monument to the Worthington force. Then they would have gone through Saint-Pierre-sur-Dive before heading to Eberbach's headquarters near Mittois. Eberbach's HQ was well hidden in a hunting lodge in this estate near Mittois, in the middle of the woods. Now the main road had been full of damaged vehicles attacked by the Allied aircraft, and so they left. They could see the yabots over Livarot, so they left the main road to come down this narrow road, hoping they wouldn't be seen. They finally got back on the main road between Livarot and Vimoutiers. Then they went through a little village called Foy de Mongommery, named after an ancestor of Field Marshal Montgomery. The Montgomerys came from Normandy with William the Conqueror. The Feldwebel Volk was he was next to the driver, kneeling down, so he could look backwards to watch the sky. And he saw two Spitfires coming. So Rommels, they would try and get in the lane next to the laundry place. So he accelerated, but the Spitfires coming so fast, they fired, the car was hit, and Daniel's arm was smashed. Rommel got glass in his face from the windscreen that shattered. So the car was now going 60 miles an hour. Daniel lost control. They wanted to get into that lane there, but the car went to the left, hit the trunk, and then turned over in the road. Rommel was thrown out onto the road. So the car was trying to get into the lane by the gatehouse there, but Daniel lost control and it swerved and hit a stump this side of the road and then turned over on the road, and Rommel was thrown into the road. Now the second Spitfire dropped a bomb but missed. Now we often think of Spitfires as being just fighter planes, but they could carry bombs. They could carry a bomb under the fuselage and one under each wing. Then the planes disappeared. Holke and Lang now went to tend to Rommel. You can see he was badly wounded in the head and there was a wound over his left eye. It took them 45 minutes before they could arrange transport. Now Vimoutiers is just there, but the hospital at Vimoutiers had been bombed, so they decided to take him to Livarot, which is some miles up the road that way. Rommel was laid next to the gatehouse until Holke managed to stop a German truck which took Rommel to Livarot. Rommel was brought to the hospice at Livarot called the Maison de Retraite de Saint-Joseph. Now, the Maison de Retraite, of the retirement home, has been moved to a new building. This has become a block of flats now. So this is where he was treated. Now the mayor and the pharmacist, Monsieur Lessen, was called to treat Rommel. Rommel had been laid on the table. Monsieur Lessen gave him an injection of camphor and ether. Surprised he didn't kill him. Rommel and the driver, Daniel, were then taken to the military hospital at Bernay. Daniel died during the night. At Bernay, Rommel was recovering quite well, but he could hear the traffic going towards the front. So on the 23rd of July, Spiedel decided to move him to Vesinet, not far from Saint-Germain-en-Laye. The attack happened on the 17th of July. The next day, Operation Goodwood started, and the British Canadians took the rest of Caen. On the 20th of July was Valkyrie, the bomb attack on Hitler, and then followed 5,000 arrestations and executions. Rommel was recovering at home in Hurlingen, but he was suspected of being involved in the plot against Hitler. In October, 2 SS officers turned up at his house and they gave an ultimatum. They said you can either commit suicide or be tried as a traitor. And if you commit suicide, your family will be protected. So Rommel committed suicide. He was given a hero's funeral. The public were told he died from his wounds from the air attack. But who was it that strafed Rommel's car? Now, as soon as it was known that Rommel's car had been attacked, there were many candidates who put themselves forward for having done it. Some years ago, I was leading a group of Americans. We were at Point de Hoc, and I'd been talking about Rommel, the attack on Rommel. One of the ladies, she said, "Oh, I dated the man who attacked his car." I had to be quite diplomatic in putting down her illusions, because Captain Jenkins was flying a P-47 and he attacked a car near Saint-Lô, which is 50 miles away from where Rommel was. So it wasn't him. Now there are other candidates, Australian, British, Canadians, but they were either not in the right area. There was reports of attacking a car near Falaise, and that obviously wasn't Rommel. Or they might have been in the area, but when the attack on Rommel happened, they were on the ground. Now Rommel had set out from Urville around 1400 hours. It had taken 2 hours for them to get onto that road, so it was around 1800 hours. That Squadron 412 of the Royal Canadian Air Force, they were in the right place at the right time. There was a section of 4 Spitfires flying northwards, just east of the road from Vimoutier de Livarot, and Charley Fox saw a car at 11 o'clock. They waited till it was at 9 o'clock, and then he made a sweeping diving turn to attack it. Albert Pfizer was on his tail. The other 2 planes maintained height, keeping a lookout for enemy planes. Now Fox timed his shots to coincide with the car coming out of the cover of the trees. He saw it being hit and it was going out of control. Now, he obviously didn't know it was Rommel's car, and once the news came out that Rommel's car had been hit, an American pilot claimed the hit, and so Charley Fox didn't think any more of it. But later on, he realised that it probably was him, with the timing and the place. And even later, when he realised that his action went towards the death of Rommel, and that Rommel was supposed to be trying to make a treaty with the Allies, he regretted his action, as he thought it might have prolonged the war. Now, the table that Rommel was treated on at Livarot was in the retirement home, and the residents would play board games on it. In 2019, it was taken to the Caen Memorial Museum.